You said your work centers on the simple truth that the body is not just something we carry around. It is an intelligence guidance system. I'd love for you to say more about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, this was something that I discovered in my embodied dance practice. And the embodied dance practice was also something I stumbled upon. I wasn't looking to create, let's say, an embodied dance anything. I stumbled upon it out of a healing crisis, really about 25 years ago. I started exploring things in my body around what I could sense, what was there. I started mapping it and I started to get a sense of what was happening beneath the surface, or what was the energetic body? What are these layers of myself, or what are these layers that we all have that we're not talking about? So it just sparked a bit of a lifelong curiosity at that point in my life.
Welcome to the Mindfulness in Motion podcast, the show that helps you move beyond the checklist of life and into a world of joy and meaning and discovery. I'm your host, Cori Micah, and I'm excited to have all our listeners here with us today. And in this episode, we're talking to Allison. And Allison's an educator and a healing arts practitioner. We're going to talk all about embodied intelligence and how the body can guide us back to self-trust and healing. I love that. So whether you're looking to reconnect with your body or to navigate emotional patterns or simply to feel more grounded in yourself, this conversation's for you. Let's dive in. So welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Cori. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah. Okay, I told you in our pre-conversation, I said, we're just going to see where we go, and something caught me in your bio, and so I'm going to pull that out and see.
Absolutely.
So you told us, you said, your work centers on the simple truth that the body is not just something we carry around. It is an intelligence guidance system. I'd love for you to say more about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, this was something that I discovered in my embodied dance practice. And the embodied dance practice was also something I stumbled upon. I wasn't looking to create, let's say, an embodied dance anything. I stumbled upon it out of a healing crisis, really about 25 years ago, when I was in a deep, what I want to call an eating disorder. And I was very, very disconnected, very much stranger in my own body, just lots of disassociation. And I kind of hit the end of a road with it where I said, I think I'm kind of done with this now, but I don't know how to be out of it. And I was actually here, believe it or not. I'm from New Jersey, as I mentioned, but I was studying abroad in Australia at the Southern Cross University here, which is about 40 minutes away from where I currently live now. And I was taking class at a place at the university. They had a program in naturopathic medicine, which I thought was fascinating. And they had an Indigenous woman which was teaching a class called Spiritual Well-Being, which I thought was fascinating for you to be able to take a class like that in the 90s. So I jumped into that, and through that class and what the guidance I was given, I started exploring things in my body around what I could sense, what was there. I started mapping it she was teaching us about the chakra system at that point, which at that time I hadn't heard anything about. And I started to get a sense of what was happening beneath the surface, or what was the energetic body? What are these layers of myself, or what are these layers that we all have that we're not talking about? So it just sparked a bit of a lifelong curiosity at that point in my life. And as I got curious, and as I sat with, and as I listened to, I realized that my body had this whole other level of story and intelligence and wisdom that didn't feel like it was coming from my mind. And I know it sounds like a funny thing to say, but as I would move with something and I would get curious and honest about what the expression of a certain feeling was, things began to unlock inside of me where I would all of a sudden receive an answer. I would all of a sudden see the solution to something that I had been trying to figure out, or I had been thinking really hard to do. And it was the body that began to then communicate with me as I got curious about what was there and how did it need to move to express and to release. Because what I gathered at that time was that I was holding a lot of pent up stuff that had never been said, felt, not only by myself. And, now I can look back after being in the healing arts for a very long time and say that it was a lot of lineage work that was also happening through me. But basically, things opened in such a profound way that I started really finding my way out of that eating disorder. And
Mm,
I really developed a different relationship with my body where I learned how to eat again and learned how to feel, maybe for the first time.
mm,
So
hmm
that was the beginning of a lifelong relationship. And at that point, I didn't have any intention of creating the body of work that I have now. It was just something that came out of a healing crisis and has completely changed everything for me since.
So interesting to hear you say out of a healing crisis. Like they seem
Mm,
like antithesis words going in opposite directions, but yet it manifested something very positive for you in your life.
Yeah, I think I tend to see, and I don't want to at all say that people deserve or to blamed for having illnesses on any level, but it was something that I could really see that there's certain times in life where you're handed something or you're moving through something and it's an opportunity to really deepen into what is this asking of me?
Hmm
So, and I can feel like a crisis because you can just say, I'm stuck in this and I'm in this and I can't get out and I'm bound to it. So the healing is the opportunity of how you get out of that. Because
hmm
I wasn't living, I hated my body, I hated life, was just barely functioning. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate your description of that because life has lots of events that happen, whether or not it's an illness or accidents or whatever. Like there's just a lot of life that is going on that is out of our control. Nobody deserves it or doesn't deserve it. And yeah, we do have to be very careful about this idea of like,
Right. It's not like, oh yeah, you deserve to have, I don't believe in that per se.
yeah, yeah.
It's not about that at all. No.
Yeah, it's just the fact of life that things like this happen. Hard things happen in life.
Mhm.
Hard things happen to everybody in life. And then we always are left with the question, what am I going to do with it? And so, yeah, for that particular time, it looked like, yeah, I'm going to take that crisis into a healing opportunity. You were
Mm.
ready in that moment.
Well, I was ready. That was really the key. And it was like everything had conspired to make that an opportunity. What I mean by that is I had this woman who could really hold the field of healing, and I had never met
Mm,
somebody like that before. She was a powerhouse, and it was like, okay, this woman's got it. So the safety was there for me to explore it, which I think was the prerequisite. And then the other thing about it that was very unique was that because it was a small class, they actually had the class held inside a dance studio on campus.
hmm
And I was like, well, if this isn't a sign, I don't know what it is. I'm supposed to dance with this thing. So I just
Interesting.
took that information and just said, okay, this is
hmm
what's being provided, and this is what I'm going to use as a tool.
I'm going to go with it. Got it. Were
Yeah.
you a dancer before? Did you consider yourself a
I would
dancer?
say, well, I started training very late. I do have my master's degree in dance. I was a college professor in dance. So I did do the whole gamut at the end of the day. But I started late. I was always dancing in the backyard as a kid. I just grew up in a house full of police officers, so nobody really valued or understood why I was doing it. I kind of had to get more serious about it once I was working and wanted to dance. And so I'd say around the 15, 16-year-old time I started. And once I was in, I was hooked. I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. However, I'm sure if you know anything about the field, everybody and anyone would say, you started too late, you can't do it. It's
Mm,
past the time for you. And I just was too stubborn. I said, no, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I just kept at it. I kept taking class. I went to study in Europe. I went to study with who or whatever would let me study with them and just made it my life. I started teaching also not too soon after. I wasn't really an equipped teacher, but I found my profession as a teacher. I felt like this is my fulfillment. I
mm.
want to give back through teaching. This is my life. So I found those things pretty early on, but I did not have the traditional route at all.
Now, so here's my question to you of this, because
Mm.
so I'm assuming, but correct me if I'm wrong, when you say that if I know anything about the field, they would say you were too old, it was too late. That must be in the field of wanting to be a certain profession in it versus to be able to call yourself a dancer. Like,
Right.
is there a distinction there?
Yeah, it's interesting. I want to say a big part of the reason why I also created embodied dance is there's a lot inside the professional dance field, which is incredibly toxic and abusive. And I experienced that early on all the way through. My first ballet class, for example, I walked in and, the teacher's there. She comes in and slams the door and starts yelling at everybody about how we're never going to be anything.
Oh
And that
gosh.
is just prominent in the field. The level of
Wow.
abuse is prominent. I've
Mm,
I've experienced that over and over with multiple teachers almost everywhere I went. And it's a lineage of abuse, and a lot of people are calling it out now, especially in the ballet world. Like that's where it's the most prevalent. But to be in a professional company, you have to be in your prime by like age 20, like you are in your prime. And then because it's such a physically demanding career, like 20 to 30 is your like high time. So if you're just, rising up into your technique at that time, they think it's too late for you. So that's why people said that to me. But that was that was what was handed to them. So
right.
a lot of people, again, haven't really questioned so much this, yeah, patterns that just get passed down. And I've been one of those people that says, I am never going to be a teacher the way that I was taught. I am never going to pass down this way of disconnecting people from their bodies. I want to do the opposite.
Nice. Yeah, and I mean, it makes me think of, so one of the things I do when I work with teaching adults overcoming fear in water and how to swim.
Yes, I'd love to
And
hear about that.
yeah, and people, so there's this idea of I need to learn how to swim right, need to learn how to swim correctly, I need to learn, and that really looks like for most people, what they're saying is I need to learn how to do the front crawl, overarm stroke with the side breathing, things that you see and that is the fastest in the Olympics.
Mm,
And somehow that equals swim. And I say, well, that's just a particular way of swimming. It's not the right
mm,
way. It's not the only way. It's not the best way. It's not necessarily the way for you to swim. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. There are lots of ways to swim. It's about the connection to your body and the connection to the
absolutely.
water. That's the important equation.
Absolutely. And I love that analogy.
Yeah, so that's where I was curious about the idea with the dance of being too old. And yet I can see that if you're looking at it to be a profession, that yes,
Right.
these physical fields, when we're young bodies are different than older bodies in terms of their strength and abilities, much
Mhm.
as, yeah, one would wish it is not so, but it is so. But so the work that you do now, are you really working towards people to become through that line of dancer in that professional way, or is it about the healing and about connecting to your body, or both? Or
Yeah, so I've created a bit of a hybrid for sure. And what I've done is I've bridged a bit of the professional dance world with the healing arts. And really it's just I'm teaching in a way that I wish that I was taught.
mm,
So I went on in my life and I studied a lot of different things with the body. I did body work for years. I studied a lot through body language and coaching, and I worked with a lot of mentors in terms of healing. So I kind of spent my life gathering tools for a couple of decades and then really started weaving together what is it to teach to the whole person? How do we talk about what's not just happening physically, but the mental and emotional layers of what we're also carrying? How do we move with the stories that are in the body as a form of connection to community, to ourselves, and as a healing method? So
mm,
for me, my first degree was in cultural anthropology. So I just got very curious about, well, this is what dance was. And we made it a high art form, and then we took all the soul out of it. So,
mm,
how do we start weaving back those aspects of what made dance so connecting for people? The ritual, the rite of passage, using dance for these different ways of relating.
mm,
So those became things I got curious about. And so when I built my work, or when I built out some of the programs, it was to dance with the layers of what is accessible. So I have different programs and different themes that I do that with. But my main work right now is teaching teachers. So I lead a teacher training for the embodied dance method. And I really love helping people step into their leadership and find ways that they want to bring this work forward. That's not a cookie cutter, but something that comes very much from their own curiosity and skills. So I'm kind of doing the whole opposite of everything I was initially given.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. I too love training teachers. I have a new teacher in training right now in Morocco. It's so fun to, yeah, have that exponent, right? To be able to teach somebody to, all the people they're going to touch. Yeah, that
Amazing.
exponential
Wonderful. Will you be
nature. Yeah.
traveling to Morocco too?
Well, I am traveling to Morocco, but just for my own fun for surfing. But
Good for you. I
yeah,
love that.
training her. Yeah, we train students and teachers online. So you hooked
Amazing.
me with this ancient historic vision of what dance was. And it hooked me because I have this story about swimming that I say, at one point in time, like maybe back in cave person time or whatever, people were probably around the rivers and around the water, bathing themselves or washing things, and people were in swimming. They were swimming, and there was no swim class, but they were
Right.
cupping each other and enjoying their bodies in the water. And I say, and then probably one day somebody said, "Well, who can get over to that rock the fastest?" And they all like swam in all their different ways to the rock. One person got there first, and then everybody else probably started copying that person and said that
Mm,
person is doing it right. Whereas
mm.
everybody was doing it right to be, if they got to the rock, it was right. And
Yeah,
so
I
this
love
is sort of
these
how we get
analogies you have. Yeah,
yeah, we
it's
get
great.
into this like hierarchy. Like you said, now it becomes more this hierarchy. Now we're copying the fastest person. We have valued this particular way
Mm,
over the idea of being embodied, of understanding our
mm,
own body in this situation. So, is this, when you referred to this older way of dancing, is it
mm.
similar to that? Is it different than that? Say more about the origin of dance and culture. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was pretty interested in a lot of that also very early on. And when I was when I started my formal dance training, I took as many different things as I could. I would take, classical Indian dance or West African or belly dance or hula, whatever I could find, I would try. And that's what I really enjoyed and loved about it. And of course, I went on to study it a bit more formally and then teach it. But just that those different forms of training had story in them. They were all about passing on story through these
Mm,
movements.
hmm
And they all had particular functions and reasons. So there wasn't just so much, I mean, there's music, there's movement for movement's sake, but the movement was very intentional and the movement was to create a reaction with something, right? It was to invite in a certain quality. It was to celebrate something. And every culture had these different dances for celebrations or rituals. And I just found that inherently fascinating that movement was structurally created to bring a certain outcome or to
mm.
support an outcome with something. It was like using the energy of movement to almost have, yeah, to bring in something new that wasn't accessible otherwise.
A different kind of
So
language.
a different kind of language. So my particular method that I've crafted, I would say, is really to find that in a personal and a collective way. So even though I'm not teaching a perfect particular dance form or dance style, so the style that I teach now is to understand what we're holding. So what's present, what's true, what's here. And I noticed that the nervous system, because of how it functions and how it's protective, it only brings up what is available for us to be with in the moment. Meaning, when I lead people through this process, it never leads them to like a trauma that they couldn't possibly imagine. It's really just about honoring what's here, what do you notice, and to understand the stories that we tell ourselves sometimes also about the meanings we made, about why
Mm,
something happened. And my work then, got very curious about our subconscious and the way that the subconscious just dictates about 95% of what we do every day. We just think the same thoughts over and over, and we don't
hmm
have the, capacity or the questioning a lot of the times to know that that could be different. So the work that I've built is really great at looking at our belief systems and the stories that we hold and gives a means to process through some of the energy or emotion that we're carrying around different patterns that we have so that we can break free of them, so that
Mm.
we can make a new choice, so that we can align with something that we would perhaps choose instead of be at a default to. So that's really the crux of the embodied dance process. I
Got
kind
it.
of went a couple different places with that.
Yep, yep, yep. Now, I'll tell you, this is my little confession. It's not that secret of a confession because I've said it
Oh,
many
good.
times on podcasts, but I have said it many, many times. I would love to find a dance teacher who teaches dance the way I teach swimming. Because, and exactly what you're, so I'm curious about this because you're saying you're not teaching this, you listed belly dance and what is some other types of dances,
Different forms, yeah.
specific types of dances. When I take dance courses that is going for a specific type of dance, it feels very disconnected to who I am and my body, that it's really up in my head of trying to memorize these steps. And then you play music. So I have to memorize the steps and figure out the
Then
music.
find the rhythm, yeah.
Yeah. And then you change the music and then you add another step. And then I just want to, yeah, this is where I lose it.
Yeah.
So it is what you're saying and what you're teaching and how you're teaching is not to a particular style, but to somebody's own style and their music and music, or like what's at the essence of
Yeah.
what it means to dance?
Well, I think everybody inherently dances. I think it's a human thing, just like breathing. I just think it's dance for me, just like singing. It's a human expression that we've been made to believe in the last few hundred years that only a small number of people do. When in reality, it's something that we're all gifted with, is the joy of expressing through movement and the
Mm-hmm.
language of what that looks like and how the uniqueness of it across culture and across individuals. So I actually do, I live in both worlds. I have my embodied dance, classes and the way that I do that, but I still teach, contemporary dance and ballet, but I do it through my own lens,
Mm.
through a somatic way of teaching that invites people to be in with it and not trying to fight their mind around it. So I do teach the forms that I was given in terms of like, the classic technique of
Uh-huh.
those forms. But in the embodied dance method, we go in the doorway through a particular theme of, something that somebody's working through, whatever that might be, whatever theme it could be, anything. I want to discover more about my feminine energy. I want to understand why I've always come up against this feeling of being unworthy. I want to, be with or look at my fear of being seen, and we kind of
Mm.
go in the doorway of these different things and we just get curious about it. So I meet it with like what I call compassionate curiosity, staying open, no judgment, no shame, blame around it, but we dialogue a bit with the body around what's being held there. So we ask what's being activated as I'm, engaging around this topic of worthiness, what's being activated. Oh, I notice that there's this kind of pit in my stomach that moves all the way through my lower back and it feels like it's spiky. And, we get just kind of
Mm.
curious about, oh, what's that really feeling like in the body? And we map it to our history, our experiences, things that might not even be in the conscious mind, but we ask the body to show us what's the memory or the image that your body feeling that way is connected to.
Mm.
Oh, I would have never thought of that. Again, the body showing you information. It
Mm-hmm.
reminds me of this time that this happened. And then we follow the bit of the breadcrumbs around what's being held there, the meaning that we make around from what that happened. So, oh, that happened and I made it mean that I'm not good enough.
Right.
And in that moment, we can say, okay, well, then how does this part of you want to move to express? And I have a whole way of finding the movements. I, have a whole different ways of asking so that we can find that, okay, it wants to move like this, it wants to move like that. And we basically just create the conditions and the safety so that the body can move the energy that is there, that's keeping this story going. And
Mm.
it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
let's just pull the pin out of the pressure cooker. And we just do that and we let it be whatever it is. And it's like, oh, well, I guess I don't feel so held by that thought anymore. I don't feel so held by that. I kind of feel like it's not affecting me right now.
Mm.
What's the new choice then? So if you're going to bring in a new choice or you're going to bring in an intention, I'm going to intend to have my own back. Okay, how does that move? What's it like to move and have your own back?
Mm.
And then how to, bringing that fully to form. So there's a release and a reclamation, I call it, inside of the process. And it comes also from the way that I learned a lot of body work and body language with somebody that I studied with who was very interested in how we change the neural pathways in the brain, right? So the Collard method that I learned from Patrick Collard really spoke about how you bring into alignment the mental, the emotional, and the physical all at once. And then that being the greatest instigator of change. So when
Mm.
you could do that, that's when the transformation happened. That's when the new neural pathway could form, is all parts of you are coming together and saying the same thing instead of different things.
So good. Yeah. Because so many things, so many therapeutic models, I'll just say, are just very cognitively based. And
Mm,
we are missing a whole rest of this body that, yeah, it's not that our body is just to move our brain about from here to there. The whole system is connected. So, yeah,
right.
yeah,
And how problematic it's been that that's been our conditioning.
right. Yeah.
The big elephant in the room is, oh, that's a conditioning. Is that something that
Hmm.
we can also change? How do we earlier on, how do we get to kids and not bring them down the same road?
Hmm. Hmm.
That becomes a bigger question.
Yeah, that is a big question, but an important one. And yeah, it seems like, the people that I see that are ready to lean into this work, it's like, well, you've gone through all the traditional educational systems in college and early career, and then there's this big, what now? I did all the things. I checked all the boxes. I
Right.
got the awards or the whatever. And now here I am, still with me, but maybe not feeling that great still. Like I was promised something at
Absolutely.
the end of this. And is this what I
Absolutely.
was promised? Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, you name that so well, and something I think about a lot is the level of unfulfillment that most people feel because they do all the things that they were told to do, and then there's this underbelly of unfulfillment and not knowing who they are or how they got there, or
Mm-hmm.
even if that would have been something they would have chosen if they really could have listened to something deeper.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I love this idea of being able through our whole lives to be able to tap into our body and that wisdom. When people come to you, is this something that they are primed and ready for to say, my body does have wisdom, I'm willing to and curious to listen to it? Or is it something that people are like, no, I just want you to tell me how to move my body so I'm doing it correctly? And I need to what? I need to feel, I don't know what I'm feeling. I see a lot of that in our
Yeah,
world that they don't necessarily even understand what it means to feel into their body.
absolutely. And I've worked with every kind of person in every kind of way. I mean, the people that I work obviously the best with are the ones who say, okay, I'm here and I'm ready. I mean, they're going to get the most out of it. But, because when there's resistance, there's only so far you can go. So it's really to say with any person, it's always what's accessible for you. If you can't feel the deeper layers, can you feel the clothes on your skin? Can you feel any tension that you have? Can you feel what it feels like to wiggle your toes in your socks or whatever it is, and
Mm.
what are the sensations that feel safe enough that don't feel too awkward to name? And then to just go, well, okay, well, how's that for you? And then if that's okay, well, maybe taking the next step. But yeah, the disconnection is very prevalent, to say the least. I feel like not so much where I live. I live in the area of the world where, outside the Byron Bay area of Australia, which is like, kind of the Sedona of Australia. It's just very
Mm.
spiritual and people are much more, into the embodiment here. But on a global scale, I would say it's definitely much more of a bigger issue than we realize.
Yeah. Yeah. Which my brain could go in many directions on that one, but I think I
Yeah,
will.
anything you want to share on it, I'm welcome to hear.
I think I'll keep my toes out of politics and world affairs at the moment.
Well, Yeah, it's rampant. And I think that that's a big reason why is something that's important to talk about that if you don't mind me sharing, and we're not going to talk about politics directly, but I talk a lot about body as authority for this reason, because I feel that my deeper job or my deeper, curiosity is around really getting people in their bodies so that they know what they feel, so that they can not be misdirected or misguided in some way, but to really understand what their truth feels like.
Mm,
Because when we don't know what our own truth feels like, and we're just reacting from a place of fear, we're perpetuating something that nobody wants.
yeah, absolutely.
So, how do we learn to trust what we feel enough to have the discernment that I think is overall lacking? And it's not our fault even that we don't have the discernment. We were never taught. We were never taught to feel. We were never taught to. I'm going to say even critical thinking is going out the window. When I was a professor in New York, it was going out the window then. It was just like, no, we want to tell you what to do and think. And I became an educator because I want to have
Mm.
kids do their own research and make up their own minds. So
Well, and is it
it's a
true
critical
that
juncture. Yeah, go
do we
ahead.
really need to be taught how to feel, or do we need to have
We need the
spaces?
right conditions.
Yeah, spaces and places that you are allowed to continue that. Because I would make the argument that under age 5, right, this is how people are moving through the world, is by feeling their way through. And then at
Mm,
some point, typically in that 5 to 8 year old range, when executive function starts to come on board for children, and we're putting them in institutional places that require certain dogma, right?
behaviors,
Then
yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
then we're training people out of their natural inclination to feel into the body. Um,
Absolutely true. Hmm.
yeah, that's how I see it. So yeah, we're very nobody gives stars and awards and first places to being connected to your body or
Absolutely
listening
not.
to your intuition.
And yet it's where all your power is. And it's where all your peace is. It's all the where all the stuff that money can't buy is.
Mm-hmm.
The thing
Yeah,
that everybody's looking for in their next lipstick or their next job or their next boyfriend.
right. It's
The
all
only way out is in, I say. Yeah.
so true, so true. Well, this has been very interesting. I love where we went so far back in history and coming to fully around to almost into politics of today.
I would love to hear if there's anything that sparked a similarity to how you teach swimming. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it is instead of it being a cognitive process of me telling people, put your arms here and move your body like this and copying me like this. We're in the water asking people to start to pay attention to how they feel as emotion and feel as sensations and feel as physical experiences.
That.
And that is what drives it. And we really are talking about what's the goal? Well, the goal is to learn to swim. Okay, well, how is that going to feel for you? If you could learn to swim, how are you feeling? Oh, I would feel comfortable. I'd feel in control. I'd feel confident. And that's where we're starting with. Okay. So we need
Mm,
to have that at the
amazing.
beginning of the game, not as a hoped for outcome. So we're starting there.
And I'm
And
sure you have a story about how swimming became that for you as well, that you've probably shared, but yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's really about not feeling safe in the context of a class, but learning
Mhm.
anyways, right?
Great.
Because something for me was innate, like you talked about that you were dancing as a young person. I was in the water as a young person. There was something innate for me that really connected me to the water, despite me failing every swimming lesson. I still
Mhm.
wanted to be in the water and move like an astronaut. Lost in outer
Aw.
space.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you
So,
made your childhood dreams.
yes, yes. Yeah, both of
Beautiful.
us. You
Both of
dancing in
us
your
did. Yeah, we
backyard,
did.
me swimming around in the pool. So, and I love that any of these things, for our listeners, right, that we can bring this kind of embodied movement, this connecting to our
Mm,
body in any area of our life. And sometimes
Mm,
it's nice. Yeah, I love this is why I do the podcast is to see, gosh, if dance feels like the way that it's accessible to you, right? Let's go find Allison and do and learn how to be embodied on a dance floor, or probably more likely in your kitchen or your living room or something like that to start with,
mm,
or in the pool or in a myriad of other ways. But yeah, how can we play a musical instrument from an embodied place? How can we,
mm,
do a piece of art from an embodied place to really
mm.
feel that connection to ourselves and listen to that inner wisdom?
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. That's beautifully said. And the thing that I can connect to about the way that you teach in that way that I'm hearing, and for all the places that you just went with, the musical aspect or, it's the different layers of what you're connecting to. And it's just this sense of aliveness, if we're going to name it, right? It's kind of that
Mm.
aliveness that
Hmm.
you get a hold of. And it's like, oh, this is what it is to feel fully alive. This is what it is to be receiving and moving and, in that grand cycle where we can be just in that disconnect constantly. So it's like bringing the full circle back to aliveness on some
Hmm.
level. That's what I was hearing.
Yeah, yes, that's great. I love that. It's hearkening me. It's this weekend I was in Southern California bodyboarding, surfing, and I started out in my head with, well, I'm here with this new group of people. It was this beautiful group of people. I was one of the younger ones at 53. Everybody
Good for
was,
you.
up to 80 years old, right? These women. And they meet 3 times a week and go play in the ocean together. And
Love it.
yeah, started in my head, but then like, no, this is just playing in the ocean. Like, come in and yeah. So it's that aliveness that you're talking about. So much fun
I
when
love
we
it.
got out of the performance and into the
Well,
aliveness.
you'll have to come over and see the Australia waters.
It's on my list. It's on my list. Like close.
We're
It's
coming into whale season, so yeah.
coming whale season. When's
We're
whale
coming
season?
we're coming into whale season now.
Okay, so in
So
May
yeah,
is.
it's pretty magical. Yeah, they start you
Mm.
see them on the coast just breaching and yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Oh, nice, nice. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, let's tell people where they can find you if teachers want to come and learn with you. Do you have
Mhm.
student programs too, or
I do. I do
online?
student programs as well. Like I had mentioned, the main body of work that you'll find on my website is the teacher training certification, and that's at embodied-dance.com. I do also offer programs throughout the year just for people who are interested in this kind of work and way of being and want to explore their own self and really as a personal growth path. The majority of my work I share on at this moment Facebook, Instagram. So the Instagram is embodied.dance. Facebook is under my name, Allison Pagano, and you should be able to find me and reach out there. So thank you
Perfect,
so much for
perfect.
having me. It's been wonderful.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. This was very fun. And of course, we'll put that in the show notes. Take
Okay,
care.
bye for now.
Bye.